When your top offensive lineman starts calling out names in the offseason, you listen, especially when that lineman is Jackson Powers Johnson, one of the brightest young talents in the NFL. Recently, JPJ was asked which rookies have caught his eye early in camp. Without hesitation, he mentioned Dante Thornton Jr., before he even got around to Jack Beck. And what he said about Thornton, it wasn't just praise, it was validation. Dante's attacking this like a pro, Powers Johnson said. He's running with the starters and not flinching. He knows the playbook, he's locked in, and he's executing. That's not something you usually hear about a rookie wide receiver, especially one drafted late. But Thornton is showing poise beyond his years. Mistakes? Minimal. Effort? Relentless. The technique will need polishing, of course. That's part of the rookie transition. But mentally, he's already operating at an NFL level. Then came Jack Beck, another rookie making waves. JPJ shared a moment that speaks volumes. He hosted a gathering for the rookies, some food, some laughs, a laid-back evening. But when it got late, Beck stood up and said, "Hey bro, I gotta go. Need to hit the playbook." Suddenly, the rest of the guys followed. That's leadership. That's hunger. That's the kind of culture shift that wins locker rooms. Powers Johnson didn't just talk about talent. He talked about mindset. And these two rookies are showing up with a veteran mentality. They're not waiting for the game to slow down. They're meeting it head on. And let's be honest, the Raiders haven't always found hidden gems in the later rounds of the draft. Sure, they struck gold with Max Crosby, but for every Crosby, there have been a handful of forgettable picks. But maybe, just maybe, Dante Thornton Jr. is the next one to break that trend. He's not just flashing potential, he's making a case to matter in year one. The more you hear about Dante Thornton Jr., the harder it is not to believe this kid could be special. Sure, there were concerns coming out of college. Some said he couldn't run a full route tree. But let's put that into perspective. At Oregon, he was still developing, still raw. He was younger, figuring things out like most do in their early college years. But growth isn't linear, and sometimes it's explosive. Now, in just a short time with the Raiders, he's turning heads again and again. His early flashes in camp haven't gone unnoticed. Every practice rep, every detail in meetings, every route, it's building towards something. And as training camp approaches, the real test is coming. If this early momentum carries into camp, the Raiders may have found one of the biggest steals in the draft. And then there's Jack Beck. He hasn't generated as much buzz as Thornton, not yet, but that doesn't mean he's not putting in the work. Beck is fighting for that Jacoby Myers-style role, and it sounds like he's embracing it with everything he's got. He may not be the flashy deep threat, but there's a role for guys who grind, study, and know where to be. Every down. When Jackson Powers Johnson shared the story of Beck cutting a night short just to get back to his playbook, that wasn't just a throwaway detail. That was a moment, a message, a rookie who's already thinking like a veteran. Zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. The Raiders are finally starting to feel different. The days of front office mistakes and wasted first-round picks feel like a chapter we're finally closing. Whether it was Alex Leatherwood over Christian Darrisaw or Damon Arnett when better talent was still on the board, the past few regimes made too many critical errors. John Gruden and Mike Mayock, talented minds, but their draft decisions dug a hole this team had to crawl out of. Even Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler passed on stars like Jalen Carter and Darnell Wright in favor of uncertain upside. But now, since Tom Telesco took over, there's been a shift, and it's tangible. He didn't overthink it. He drafted guys who love football, guys like Jackson Powers Johnson, a tone setter, Brock Bowers, a dynamic weapon, even DJ Glaze, a developmental prospect with real promise. This isn't guesswork anymore. It's building a foundation. The Raiders are no longer spinning the wheel and hoping it lands on gold. Now, they're targeting players who live the game, and the results are starting to show. So far, all signs point to DJ Glaze being another smart investment. Taken in the third round, he's already getting buzz as the expected starting right tackle, and early reports from team insiders are full of optimism. He's raw, but the tools are there, and if he keeps progressing, he could lock that spot down for years. But the real gem of this offseason might be Ashton Jeanty. The moment the Raiders drafted him, it felt different, explosive, confident. Jeanty isn't just a running back. He's the kind of player who can change a game with one touch. If he stays healthy, He has the talent to be a top 5 back in the NFL for the next decade. That's not hype. That's potential backed by production. And let's not overlook what the front office pulled off beyond Genty. They moved strategically, trading down twice to select Jack Beck in the second round, and picked up valuable extra capital in the process. Then came Dante Thornton Jr. in the fourth, a wideout who might end up being one of the most talked about rookies in camp. Add in names like Caleb Rogers, expected to compete at guard, and Charles Grant, a long-term tackle prospect who could also shift inside if needed. And it's clear, JohnSpytek and Tom Telesco are building with vision. Spytek's draft already feels like a turning point. He brought in Darian Porter, who's flashing early. He found versatile linemen. He grabbed receivers with unique traits. He secured a dynamic backfield weapon. These aren't random shots in the dark. These are calculated moves, and the results could be massive. Now, will every rookie become a star? Of course not. But if Beck ends up putting up 800 yards per season and Thornton gives you 600 yards consistently, that's excellent value for where they were picked. Beck wasn't taken top 10. He went 58th overall. Expectations are reasonable, but the upside is real. But then there's the disappointment. In a move that stings a little for Raiders fans, the Baltimore Ravens just signed Jaire Alexander, the former Packers star corner, who had been loosely linked to Vegas. Let's be honest, the Raiders could have used him. No, he might not be a top 5 corner right now, but even as a top 15 guy, he would instantly become the Raiders' best cornerback. That secondary needs playmakers, and Alexander, despite not being a perfect schematic fit, brings something this team still lacks: proven high-level talent on the outside. Instead, he's headed to Baltimore, a team that already boasts one of the league's best secondaries. And the kicker? His deal is modest, reportedly only $4 million guaranteed, with incentives that could bring it to 6. That's manageable, especially for a team like the Raiders that still has holes to fill. It's frustrating. It feels like one of those moments where a calculated gamble could have elevated the defense instantly. But in the end, Alexander likely chose the contender, the stability, and the system that fit him best. Still, the Raiders are trending up. Their rookies are working, their scouting is sharper. And for once, the future feels like it's being built the right way. Even with all the progress this offseason, the Raiders still have a few questions left to answer, especially at cornerback. Yes, the team has added promising pieces, but if they want to take that next step, they can't afford to sit still. One name still floating in free agency who could be an ideal fit is Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore is no longer in his prime, but he doesn't need to be. He just needs to be steady, smart, and long-limbed. And he checks all 3 boxes. He's a veteran with championship pedigree who thrives in zone coverage, which happens to align with the Raiders' shift to more cover 3 looks under the new defensive staff. He wouldn't need to shadow top receivers every snap. He'd just need to do his job and mentor a young secondary trying to find its identity. It's worth remembering Gilmore waited until deep into the offseason last year before signing. If the Raiders are watching closely, this could be the moment to strike. And it's not just a fan-driven idea. The Raiders' front office is leaving the door open too. General Manager Tom Telesco and Assistant GM Champ Kelly haven't ruled out more moves. In fact, the message has been clear. The 53rd spot on this roster is never safe. If someone better becomes available, the Raiders are ready to pounce. But not all the headlines this week were promising for RaiderNation. Earlier, we saw the Baltimore Ravens land Jaire Alexander, a missed opportunity that still stings. But now, in a twist no one saw coming, the Houston Texans signed Damon Arnett, the Raiders' 2020 first-round pick who never lived up to expectations in Vegas. This one's bittersweet. Arnett was taken 15th overall, a slot reserved for long-term starters, not short-term experiments. He lasted less than 2 seasons with the team, and off-field issues ultimately sealed his fate. It was a high-risk, high-reward pick that never delivered. But now, after a stint in the UFFL with the Houston Roughnecks, where he tallied 18 tackles, a sack, and a pick-6 this past season, Arnett is getting one more shot in the NFL. He's staying in Houston, this time with the Texans, hoping to write a new chapter. And while some fans won't forget how his time with the Raiders ended, there's something to be said for second chances. Maybe with the right support, the right coaching, and the right culture, Arnett finally figures it out. Maybe he needed to fail before he could grow. Of course, there's also the question, would things have been different under a different coach? Someone with a reputation for player development, like PeteCarroll, might have unlocked Arnett's potential early. But under Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, the leash was short. Their approach was simple: follow the program or you're gone. Arnett didn't, and that was that. Whether or not he succeeds in Houston remains to be seen. But for now, it's another reminder of the past mistakes the Raiders are still recovering from, and how far the new regime has already come.